Okay, we are back in Senate institutions. It is still March 28th. And now we are going to review H 458.
There we go.
Okay. Which is an act relating to the Agency of Digital Services. And we have with us Tim Ash. It's not his first time in this room by any means. He is the Deputy State Auditor. And so welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Deputy State Auditor. I've not met you in person before now, which is sort of hard to believe.
Oh my goodness.
But was able to meet everyone right before
Perfect.
right before you walked in the room.
And thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been in your shoes on a Friday afternoon. And so I am interested in keeping you interested and not speaking any longer or shorter than that. So I'm going to put up some slides in a second, which hopefully will just visually show why this bill exists. But the short story is our office did an audit of ADS back in 2023. ADS was formed, I believe, in 2017, 2018. That was when it kind of got going. And because of the huge volume of spending on IT projects, it's sort of clearly in the crosshairs of any auditor's office, but we wanted to see how ADS matured a little bit before stepping in and doing an audit. The audit was of the Enterprise Project Management Office. They're the ones that kind of do the project management of all the really large ticket items. And the primary focus was to look at whether the projects were coming in on schedule, whether they were coming in on budget, and then how ADS was internally assessing how they were doing on those things. You know, were they trying to get lessons learned so that the next project wouldn't have overages that can sometimes be in the millions and so on. And so our audit wound up having a series of recommendations to ADS. They've adopted some of them. We also made recommendations to the legislature in three regards, and that's not typical for an audit. Usually the recommendations are just to the auditee, ADS in this case. The reason that we made the recommendations to the legislature was that ADS in our closeout meeting with them, where we walk through all of our findings and give them a chance to tell us if we've missed something or the facts aren't quite the right way. They said that they were unlikely to adopt some of our recommendations because the legislature hadn't required them to do so. Even though we might all sit down and say these would be kind of smart, good things to do. They were saying we haven't been told to do it, so we're probably not going to do it. And so that's why we added those recommendations, because the recommendations were there primarily to serve actually you, the legislature, and the public to understand whether these projects were going well or not. So I'm going to quickly walk through this with you, and I really will try to be as as possible as you go.
So let me just ask you a question before. We have not looked at your audit report.
Yep.
We need to look at the report.
You would find the audit report extremely interesting. You will be more alerted afterwards. You will have some interesting insights into this kind of growing portion of state government, but it's not critical to read it in order to see the wisdom of the bill.
Okay, great.
So I'll just leave it there. But because some of what I'm going to tell you that we found is really looking backwards and is no longer as important as looking forwards. So we did an audit. We looked at 6 fairly large projects of a different nature. I won't bore you with the specifics of what these projects intended to do, other than to say that the CCB is the Cannabis Control Board. So there was a whole new web system for them, Department of Liquor Licensing, 2 different DEVA ones. We tried to have a balance of projects across different partner departments of government, and that had a mix of internal focused IT projects, ones that serve the state employees themselves, and then others that had some public interaction. I already talked about it. So what did we find just on the basic? I said that part of it was to look at whether the large projects were coming in on budget or on cost. The short story was they're generally not coming in on budget. They're not coming in on schedule. And there are sometimes very legitimate reasons why that's the case. And so it's not about finding fault. It's just there should be an explanation for it. And then sometimes projects have clearly gone off the rails. In this instance, even though we say 4 of 6 projects exceeded their original cost estimate, you'll notice that there's only 5 projects here with bars. That is because the so-called business portal that was being done through the Secretary of State's office, which was meant to be a place that someone starting a business or maintaining a business would literally go to one place on the Secretary of State's website and be able to just go through the entire series of must-dos in order to remain registered and have all their fees paid and all that. It's not on here because it sort of became not a success. And $2 million had been spent, but the project was sort of, I can't say dead because it had a little life to it, but it was lingering in a transition state where one of the vendors kind of went missing and stopped returning phone calls, and they were trying to recover money. So it was a disaster. Let's just put it.
So it's not happening.
Well, more on that. But
Okay.
at the time, we found that it was supposed to be done long earlier and on a specific budget, but that hadn't quite happened. The schedule, as you can see, 4 out of the 5 on this took a lot, well, in some cases, significantly longer than had been originally anticipated. The Secretary of State project, of course, is not on here as well. That project isn't complete still, so you could say 5 out of the 6.
And that scales in weeks.
This is in weeks, yeah. Years wouldn't have. It was only scale we could use.
No, weeks make
Particularly
sense.
helpful.
Yeah.
But as I said, the audit wasn't saying, the audit's focus wasn't ADS good, ADS bad. You took this particular project and it went 2 weeks longer, therefore you should be, slapped on the wrist. The Cannabis Control Board actually is a good example where the original project went out to bid, things were moving along, and then the legislature changed the law and added a new component which had to be added. Well, that added costs and schedule. So it's not so much that we just look at that and reach immediate judgments, but it allows us to ask questions. Why did it take longer? Why did it cost more? In this case, there's actually it's almost like a self-imposed outcome. But the reason we're here and the reason this bill moved through the House Energy and Digital Infrastructure Committee is because the information that was being presented both to the legislature and the public so that you could understand in real time how projects were going was really inadequate for the task. When we did the audit, this was, and now there is a slightly different version of this dashboard on the ADS project management website. It's actually really good because you can see all of the significant IT projects going on in the state. I don't know if any of you have ever looked at this before. Okay, so at least one of you. And the problem was that we found, and I'll just kind of get up here if you don't mind. I find it interesting. See, I told you, I'm trying to hold your interest. But just as an example, all right, so this was the Secretary of State Business Portal. If before, you'd look at this and you'd say, okay, like, what do these even mean? That a project has a yellow exclamation mark versus a green check mark, and we notice there's no red X's in the final line. Sometimes you'd have predominantly yellow and it would be green and yellow. This was not really clear. Then there were other issues, which is when it would say estimated completion date, that was not actually the original estimated completion date. That was a revised completion date. So let's say you were the project manager, your project had hit these bumps and you knew that you were going to be 2 years late. They were just hitting a reset and saying, oh, instead of being done on January 1, 2025, we're two years late. It's going to be January 1, 2027. So suddenly that date would change. And then you would look at the thing and say, oh, well, that's 2 years from now. We must be well within the time frame we always thought it was going to be. The only way you would have known that it was 2 years late is if you went back and looked at reports from previous years, which, as you know, is not the easiest thing to do in real time as a legislator. The same was happening on the cost side. These were updated prices. So it could make a project look like it was on time and on budget, even if it was many millions over the original estimate and years later than it was expected to be completed. Now, they weren't doing this to do a sleight of hand or to be deceptive. I think in IT project management circles, it's typical that you do kind of a status update and say, okay, where are we at now? And then you reset expectations. So that's really what they were doing. But what we were looking at back then was merely a moment in time rather than the complete picture. Now, this is where it shows, I hope,
this is a little bit more of a show don't tell of what I just said. So what you see in the top, I have the then and now. The then is cut from the previous slide. So the images that were taken in 2023 from that dashboard. And then last night I went and tried to find the same project on the current dashboard. And you'll see the illustration of the point I was making. Before, it said the estimated completion date for the business portal, December 30, 2023. Now it says July 31, 2025. But you wouldn't know that from just looking at what's being presented. Moreover, the price now is 140,000. Before it was 2.5 million. So if I'm looking at that for the first time, I'm saying, oh, it's a very small IT project. They just started it and everything's going swimmingly. It's got green check marks. I guess everything's good. It wouldn't have allowed you to say, whoa, something dramatic has happened here. This project was supposed to be done years ago, and it was conceived of as a much larger project. What's going on? And you can see that this is happening in this case on all the examples I use here. The dates have been modified to reflect the current thinking rather than when you all initially appropriated the funds. As I say, again, this is not meant to be a sleight of hand that ADS is doing, but nonetheless, the information is being presented to you in a way that allows you to easily get a handle on where things are at.
This is 2 years from when you.
Yeah, so this was sort of just after the legislature adjourned in 2023, and then so almost two full years.
So they've been aware of this for a while.
Yes. Yeah. No, and when we did the audit, we met with them and said our primary. So I'm going to get to the punchline now,
okay,
and then we'll return to it to reinforce it. The primary thing we were saying was when you are presenting these projects to the legislature, the public, whether it's on a dashboard like this, whether it's in the annual report they submit, you should present the original cost estimate and schedule completion date, and then the revised one, so that people know the whole story without having to connect lots of complicated dots and going back and pulling out old files and doing all that. And that's what the primary emphasis of the bill is trying to do, is to make it more transparent for you so that you can just ask the questions. They also provide the information in their annual budget report document. They have to produce like an ADS report on an annual basis. I think it comes.
We have that somewhere.
Yeah, it comes in like early January, I think. But again, here's like another visual example from back-to-back annual IT activity reports. Same project was considered in a yellow status. That's sort of like, oh, we've got to be really careful because things aren't going perfectly. Then it transitioned to green, but the only reason it transitioned to green was because they changed the expected completion date, right? So again, you're wanting to just know whether things are on the right path. The moment you see that green, you're like, that's supposed to tell me everything's good. I don't need to focus on that one. But in fact, there's more going on here. And so we were suggesting that.
Blinking yellow.
And then in there, as every department has to provide these sort of broader performance measures to say like the things that we do that are actually really critical to Vermonters and the people we serve. The on-target projects, which the red box is my own creation, saying 70% of the projects are on target is not quite accurate. That's 70% after they've revised the dates to meet the new expectations. So it could be that the original schedule is only met, a very small percentage of the time. But you wouldn't think that by looking at the way this was presented. So all of this is an attempt to get them to communicate in a more clear way how the project is really going so that you can get a proper status report. I'm going to skip through the recommendations we made to ADS, other than to say that in the House committee, it was very heartening because the Secretary Riley Hughes, who was not the secretary at the time, clearly was signaling that she wants them to do a better job communicating what's needed. And so she was in the committee throughout that process, and that's really to be commended. But I'm just going to touch on the three things that we suggested to the legislature. The first is something that we would actually recommend a change from the House bill. One of the things that are you familiar with the ABC form for IT projects? The ABC form is what ADS basically has this document that the agency who wants to do a project tells them all the inputs, all the costs, and
we were suggesting that that should include the costs of staff at the host agency associated with the project. So some projects are kind of like off the shelf. You don't really need a lot of staff time to do it. But in the example of the Child Development Division project that was in our audit, it was about $1 million of DCF's staff solely dedicated to this project.
Existing staff.
Yes, but that's
I
all
guess
they
it
were
would-
doing. Like it was
okay.
out, that time was allocated just to this project because it's like this really significant component of their Child Development Division. So to not have that $1 million in their project costs means that you're sort of understating the cost benefit when you're doing that initial review. And ADS has to sign off on the ABC form before the project gets a green light.
What does ABC stand for?
Good question.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll find out for you.
Yes,
We'll
it's
let you
so,
know.
it seems so simple, ABC, but the short story, that is the document.
Maybe
that-
benefits and costs actually is the-
Something like that. There's someone at ADS has to sign off on that though, in order for the project to go forward. And we were
Okay.
saying that it should include those costs. What the committee, the House committee did was said, effectively took ADS's, I don't want to say their position, but basically said that those costs would be included if the host agency gave them the information. And our feeling is, no, you have the sign off leverage, so you should tell them they have to give it to you. And so we would recommend that you require it rather than say that the host agency will be the one who determines that outcome. And then the other two key pieces. I'll go to number 3 before I go to number 2, because number 2 is really most important. I want to finish with. Number 3 is we raised the issue of whether an IT project has actually done what it was supposed to. So the projects are supposed to have kind of goals, like we reduce the amount of time someone has to wait to get a permit. All things like that are measurable, that make the point in the first place, right? And that's not always happening in some of these projects. And some of them have goals that only will prove themselves out after the project is completed. But ADS just sort of, when they get to the green light and the project is up and running, they kind of leave. So no one is going back and saying, did the service actually improve? Were Vermonters actually better served by this? And we were suggesting that they work to come up with a practice moving forward to have clear business goals and then a method of going back after the project has commenced to make sure that they're actually being fulfilled. That is not in the draft bill, so we would recommend that go in. Number 2, though, is the key one. This is the one that I would say at its core is really what this committee should be at a bottom line, should support in some form the way the House did it, which is asking them to provide you the baseline cost and schedule information for these projects whenever they're reporting to you the status of these IT projects, whether it's on the dashboard, which is spelled out in the bill that got passed in the House, or it's in the annual report, just so that you're in a position to ask knowledgeable questions and get kind of a realistic picture of the journey that one of these projects has been on. And so I'll stop there because I think I probably made the point.
So you have 3 recommendations.
Yes.
Are all 3 of them still necessary and relevant to what we just received from the House?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Number 1 is in the bill, but it says that they will include the cost if the department provides it to them,
Okay.
which is effectively the status quo. And we're saying no, if they have in-house costs at the Agency of Education, Department of Children and Families, tell them they have to give you that information before you sign the document that allows the project to move forward. So it's not really, we don't believe it's onerous, and it's not likely to make or break the project in the end, because I presume those costs will not be significant compared to the IT development side, but it creates a more accurate reflection of the total cost to do it.
Right. And I'm sure it varies over different
Yeah.
departments,
That's right.
whether or not they are comfortable.
The more complex
Yeah,
the
estimating those costs.
the IT need, the more costs they're going to.
But honestly, it's important that they know. I mean, aside from the reporting, it's important that the department know what they need to allocate. in
Yeah, it
terms
should
of
be good. It
employee
should be good for them because in
Yeah.
theory they do know it. But you wouldn't, like using the Child Development Division, if the project was going to cost $500,000 and then $1 million of staff time, it was going to save $20,000 for taxpayers a year. You'd say, wait a sec, maybe this is not the brightest or the most important thing to appropriate funds for. So that one, we would suggest a revision, and we can provide you with the language that we initially proposed, which was in the bill as introduced.
So that would be helpful.
Number 3 is just not in there. It was in an earlier version. I think that ADS asked for it to be removed, and I can't say why they removed it. It sort of happened fast. And
We can ask them
that's
that.
And number 2 is in the bill.
Okay.
You might decide to spend more. I don't know how much time you plan to spend on the bill. I know you have the capital bill and other, pressures on your time. But for us, the bottom line is wherever you can direct them, provide you the original cost and schedule. Because otherwise it's very easy to see the current state of affairs and not appreciate either how badly some things are going off the rails or things that they've had to overcome to keep a project moving towards success. And the good news was, all through the audit, ADS was great to work with. And so this was not like a hostile coming in and them being defensive about everything. I think they really worry that people will draw the wrong conclusions from the information. Fair enough, but it is a more transparent and accurate way is what we're suggesting.
Okay. Great. This is actually a really good time to have a bill like this because we're just starting our work on internal services as opposed to data privacy and more external things.
Well, the ADS project management people are really interesting, and the projects they work on are really critical. I'm always amazed. If you look at the dashboard, which I'll send you the link, it is kind of amazing to see how much is going on at any one time. And none of you was here. So there used before ADS, it was the Department of Information and Innovation, DII, and they would create this binder with like black coil, and it would have all these projects. And no one in the legislature was responsible for overseeing any of this. There was no committee that oversaw IT at the time. I'm dating back to like 2016, 2017. And you'd open this thing, and it would be like Project 1, $300 million, Project 2, $80 million. And I remember being with, Dick Mazza, as you know, is not a great technologist, but we're all like, very big round numbers. Is anyone really digging into this?
Exactly.
And so we created JITalk, which is now, kind of getting its sea legs, which is good. That was one piece of it. But the real eye opener was Vermont Health Connect. Many of us who had a particular vision about how healthcare might get reordered, I don't know that anyone would have said the primary setback to kind of the movement in that direction would be a website. But to live here through that was to know how the technology has to work, because people tend to associate kind of philosophical healthcare things with a website.
Yeah.
And that website was such a disaster. And as someone who was buying as an individual on the exchange, I was suffering just like everyone else. So when I was told it was the Nothing Burger or any of the other slogans at the moment, as people tried to navigate it, I was like, no, this is a human element to it that is really bad. So anyway, so it is really good that the committee now has kind of the ownership of this, because it's been like everyone has sort of said not it, for years, but someone has to get on this and start having a process.
It's important.
Yeah.
All right. That's great.
Yeah.
So questions, folks, comments?
I'll send you a link to the dashboard just so that you have it handy. You can look at it. I'll send you the language that we recommend that be added. It won't be new to ADS because they heard the testimony the last time, and certainly have.
Okay. Are there any other technology type issues or concerns that you have that we should know? And you don't have to tell us now, but should we have you back again for anything else in IT? Because we're kind of planning the rest of the.
Yeah, we'll let me think about that.
Okay.
I'll let you know, but I will say there's a bill that's coming over related to government accountability. It's kind of the replacement of the former Government Accountability Committee, which got eliminated.
Right, and
years
then
ago.
I was on the summer one.
And you were on the summer,
Yeah.
right? So that bill's coming back.
Okay.
And one of the things we recommended was that committee
The Government Accountability Committee used to be a very painful committee for people to serve on because it felt like a bunch of wordsmithing and semantics talking about outcomes and outputs. And everyone's like, what about the government accountability part where we get to figure out why things aren't
Mhm.
as good as we wish they were and try to improve things? So one of the things we recommended to make the committee truly useful, if the Senate goes along with it, is to identify each year a set number of activities like new legislation that has a lot of moving parts, or things like big IT projects that should have like quarterly check-ins beyond just getting an annual email that has like so much information you can't digest it. So let's say hypothetically DMV came in and said, we want to do $100 billion IT overhaul this year that's going to do all these 20 things. That might be an opportunity to say, like, we want to flag that as one that we're particularly interested in getting regular updates. And that could be having Lisa Gobbin or JFO be your watchdog and get more useful updates. So let me think about it a little bit. So I'm not just winging it. But I think there'll be some opportunities for this committee to like really move forward in a good way on rallying all this IT spending.
Terrific.
The bill you were just talking about has been introduced.
It is, I think it has come over now.
Oh, sorry.
But it would be like right around now. I forget how the timing works when they.
So you don't know what the number is.
What's that?
You don't know what the bill number is.
Not off the top of my head, but I'll email it to you. I'll sit over there and I'll email it to you.
It's an H.
Yeah.
I'm just being.
You guys haven't passed the bill yet?
I did go through
For-
each one.
for- to the
I
introduce?
did try to find it on my own before asking.
Yeah, go through each one and report back. to you.
Yeah,
I will.
and we want summaries.
Yeah,
of
I
the
will
ones that
do.
are-
I will do that.
And speaking of challenging systems, but, all right, well, thank you. This is
Yeah, thank
great.
you. That was great.
Helpful.
I'm glad because I haven't met some of you, I figured it's a long way to come, but I'll make good use of the time. It's great meeting you guys. So
Yes.
are you getting something fun?
Yeah.
Everything.
We are having
We're still
fun.
We're-
We didn't
So we
introduce
have to
ourselves.
say yes.
Did you?
I met everyone before.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, but I'll
Good.
save my questions about.
Well, we're not bored. We're not bored, right, folks?
No, not.
It'd be hard to be bored.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I think you're really lucky. I mean, I'm not here. It's like, I miss this place every day. It's an amazing experience, right? Like,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just very, very special experience.
Yeah,
Alright.
yeah.
Now I walk around like, I feel like a ghost. You're like,
Oh.
I really hear.
Well, you can be here as much as you want.
Like
That's what- yeah.
I've been here and like watching people cry and like anger. and,
Wow.
Well, what we do makes a difference.
Yeah.
So you can hang out and cry. That'll just remind us about taking our responsibility seriously. So we do have on our agenda, committee discussion of the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. And, so 4 of us went to the facility yesterday and we spent a couple hours at least. And we DOC folks were with us and we went to the various they call them home 1, home 2, and we saw where the kids apart are, where that happens, the visitation with the children, because they made a special place in addition to the regular visitation area. And we did see the room where folks who are having just emotional, mental crises are, and which is a more modern room. And we saw the honors unit, which was probably, I mean, for me, one of the most positive places. But it's obviously a facility that needs to, that is not supportive of good health, mental health or physical health. That's my short evaluation, but I think, well, if there's something that you all want to talk about right now, we can talk about it now, but I think it would be really helpful to have a conversation with DOC. And we did have some of those conversations yesterday.
Yeah, we talked about it. It would be good to have them in here. they can talk to us or hang up, this about the timeline of the
Of the new
new
facility.
facility, yeah.
Yeah.
It should be fast.
It,
That far fast
It's-
it's been there.
yes, and there's a lot of moving parts. I would prefer it to, one would prefer EOC to be in here, but I will say this. It's not representative of Vermont.
Mm.
And I was, you know what, I don't want to go into it anymore. I'd rather not without them here, particularly since we're live, and to have a fuller conversation with that. I just think we need to get all parties involved in this instead of to have that full conversation.
So for the people that say that, we shouldn't have a different place, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I would listen to why they feel that way. I think there is and there's a significant number of people that do feel that way for various reasons. I'm always a proponent of listening. Some is financial. I mean, and that's the, you know, for a lot of people that it comes with a significant price tag. I mean, that's just for you know, a very small, in the grand scheme of things, number of people. That being said, it bordered, and this is me talking, I'm not talking for anyone else, this is Senator Joe Major talking. It borderline a human rights issue. I felt it that bad, and then on the staffing side, because I have had jobs that I struggle to go to work every day because of the environment, not the job, but the environment. And you've got good people there that were attentive, that were working hard to make the best of a situation. When we all came in to this committee, and I'm glad you really jumped on board on this. Just having the basic things to do their job, Wi-Fi. I cannot, you know, having to go to our jobs outside of this and not have Wi-Fi is something that we need to address, and that would, I mean, talk about tips of icebergs.
Difference maker.
Yeah, and but I want a fuller conversation, and I'll leave it at that.
We should say that what we saw with the staff is a dedicated, caring group who are doing as best they can. And they're doing a great job for what they have there.
Oh,
It really was. And I've worked with corrections people mostly outside of the facility forever, and almost to everyone, they're always dedicated.
I find them
I reflect, it would reflect
dedicated
definitely
people.
with the folks there and also in Springfield.
Very dedicated people, and that's why I get defensive of them, because I know them. I know them.
Yeah,
And
they need a
I
better
get,
working environment.
and I get defensive when I start to hear about just sometimes even the people around them don't portray them for who they are. And that makes me angry.
We did hear a little bit of staffing issues there. There was the issue, well, we could talk about it with them, but there was one thing we had an next day that some people weren't able to do because they needed someone else working there.
Do you have anything, Sam? You don't need to say.
I wanted to see the food they were eating. I was curious.
Oh, I was
Let's
wondering
see,
that
The
too.
food they were eating, I was just
But-
curious about what they.
Yeah,
Well, we can ask for that on our next,
There's-
well, just because we're gonna go to another facility too. Okay, so we can, we should be able to schedule that next week because we'll have the capital bill. And so we can start looking at the corrections part of the capital bill and have that conversation at the same time, okay? All right, anything else?